I'm Samantha, a senior at a university in New York, having moved from Halifax. This year is my graduation, and since my job hunting has settled, I'm now leisurely enjoying the rest of my college life. I have a brother called Joshua who's taken over our family business back home and is doing his best. He always tells me things like, "Find yourself a good partner soon," or "Aren't you getting married yet? You'll end up an old maid." I think to myself, what about you? But he always excuses himself by saying, "Work is my lover." But he's actually a pretty reliable brother. Our parents are working with him in the family business, but now that they're past their 60s, they're focusing more on supporting Joshua. And now, Joshua is getting married. His fiancée is Emily, 27 years old. She works for a major corporation in New York. They met in college through a horseback riding club they were both interested in. They had a long-distance relationship, but it beautifully led to marriage. Her father is an executive at a well-known company. It seems like her family is quite distinguished. Since I live in New York, I got to meet her when Joshua visited. This is my sister, Samantha. Unlike me, she's quite good-looking, right? But she's got a strong will and still has no boyfriend. Joshua would joke. Hey. Oh, I'm Samantha, his sister. I'm not as strong-willed as he says. Nice to meet you. I greeted her in a casual manner, following Joshua's laid-back introduction. Such a close relationship between siblings. I'm an only child, so I'm a bit envious. She smiled. But soon, I'll be your sister-in-law. It's so nice to think I'll have such a wonderful sister-in-law instead of this clumsy brother. Ahaha, you got me there. It was a somewhat unusual first meeting. Despite being from an elite family, Emily had none of the airs you might expect, and she was a genuinely lovely person. Frankly, she seemed too good for Joshua. She also introduced me to her parents. Due to Joshua's schedule, he couldn't meet them, so it was just me. Her father is indeed a top executive at a large corporation. He exudes dignity and elegance, with a touch of intimidation. Her mother was always smiling, a very graceful woman. She reminded me a bit of Emily. We dined at a Michelin-starred steak restaurant, thanks to the Emily family. Not used to such fine dining, I was hesitant, but Emily and her mother kindly helped me out. Her father then seemed to see right through me, asking, "Samantha, you don't seem used to places like this, do you?" "No, I've lived in my hometown until university, so I mostly ate at a small diner." I replied nervously. You'll probably have more opportunities like this, so it might be good to get used to it. Our family frequents places of this caliber. I see. I was a bit taken aback by the mention of our family and his somewhat condescending attitude. Dad, that's rude. Samantha is still a student, so it's natural she's not familiar with these kinds of places. Emily came to my defense. Exactly. It's not like we always eat at fancy places. After all, your favorite is fried calamari. Her mother joined in my support. If you like fried calamari, Halifax has some delicious diners serving seafood. I'll ask Joshua to send some next time. That sounds lovely. Lucky you, Dad. Well, I'm always up for trying delicious food. After being gently scolded by his wife, her father became a bit more subdued. The dinner continued in a harmonious atmosphere. "Didn't I hear your family is in agriculture?" Her father suddenly asked me, as if the thought just occurred to him. Joshua's working hard taking over the family business. He has a resilience you won't find in city men, and he's a really good person. Oh my, aren't you two just adorable? Mom, stop teasing. They seem like a close-knit family. However, her father seems to be a bit different. Is it really okay for his family business to be in farming? Won't you struggle after marrying into it? Work might be tough, but it's not all manual labor like in the old days. There's been a lot of mechanization, hasn't there? Emily countered. That's only for large-scale operations. What about your family's farm? Do they have things like planters and combine harvester? He then asked me. We don't have planters or combine harvesters. As I thought. A poor farming family from the countryside, then. He concluded sharply. Well, we're not struggling to make ends meet. Sure, we're in the countryside, and sometimes bears show up, but… don't strain yourself. From our family's perspective, yours seems quite impoverished. Dad, that's a rude thing to say. Emily scolded him, but he continued. I just don't want you to be unhappy. If this marriage means you'll face financial difficulties, I can't approve of it. You should marry someone suitable for our family. Emily was visibly upset by his remarks. What are you saying? Samantha is right here. It's embarrassing for me. Trying to calm the situation, her mother intervened. Why don't you and Samantha go have some coffee? I'll have a word with your father here. Encouraged by her mother, Emily and I left the restaurant. I'm sorry about my father's rude remarks. Don't worry about it. I'm sure your father just finds it hard to let you go. Thank you for saying that. She managed a small smile. Eventually, the date for Joshua and Emily's wedding was set, and it was to be held in Halifax. Emily had to go ahead for the preparations. And Joshua tasked me with bringing her parents. Of course, Joshua would cover all expenses. Joshua said, treat them as you see fit, don't worry about the expenses. With that in mind, I pondered the possibilities. However, her father, having already labeled my family as poor farmers from the countryside, arrogantly insisted on arranging his own travel and accommodations, telling me not to bother. I've been instructed by Joshua to ensure you receive the best hospitality, and he will be covering the expenses, so there's no need to worry. I firmly responded. Your idea of the best might be limited by your means. Elites like us won't be satisfied easily. Are you planning to squeeze us into a cramped budget flight and a cheap inn? That would just be a nuisance. We'll make our own arrangements. That won't be necessary. I firmly countered his baseless assumptions. Yet, he remained unyielding. I'm saying don't bother. A farming family without modern equipment is too poor for words. I'd rather skip the wedding. He continued without even looking at me. Furthermore, only my wife and I will attend the wedding. We can't show our relatives such a pitiful ceremony. We plan to host our own reception later, one suitable for our family. It will be a lavish event with top-notch venue, cuisine, and guests. Actually, thinking about it, your family and relatives would probably be too embarrassed to attend such a grand reception. They'll surely feel the stark difference between elites and the impoverished. While Emily and her mother are wonderful, I couldn't stand her father. You're free to think what you want. Anyway, I'll be taking you both to Halifax as Joshua requested. It might be interesting for you to see what a poor wedding is like. I retorted with a hint of sarcasm, frustrated by his attitude. I'm not sure if he understood me, but her father smirked and said, well, I suppose seeing a simple wedding isn't something one comes across often. It might be amusing. On the other hand, her mother said, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since we've been to Halifax. And there's so much delicious food there. Always smiling as usual. Emily's father usually works in New York, but their home is in Nebraska. It will be the best to fly for long distances, but he really dislikes airplanes. Being strapped to a seat on a plane, unable to walk around freely. Sitting the whole time, it's like being treated as a criminal during the security checks. It's always unpleasant. While I could understand some of his points, it felt overly fussy for an adult. So, could we arrange transportation to Alaska that's not by plane? It was a challenging request, but then I had a great idea. I discussed the situation with Joshua, who laughed off Emily's father's ignorance, saying, he really doesn't know anything. Such a misunderstanding. It's because you and Emily don't explain things properly. He's just misunderstanding on his own, there's nothing we can do about that. But imagine how I felt hearing all that. I was furious. Sorry. Look, I'll send you plenty of your favorite butter sandwiches to make up for it. Just cheer up and make sure you guide them safely. Alright, I'll do my best then. Now, it was just a matter of fulfilling my task. And the day came for her parents to depart for Halifax. I arranged for a car and went to pick them up from their home. Good morning. I apologize for the early disturbance. Her father, looking sleepy, grumbled, "This is too early. It's only 6:30 a.m. I'm sorry, but this was the only flight available. First, we'll drive to the port." The port? That's unexpected. Yes, it's a bit unusual, but I think you'll find it interesting. Well, I suppose the thought process of the simple is beyond elites like us. Please enjoy the journey. Despite his continued unpleasant attitude, it's now my turn to take charge. After about 2 hours, we arrived at the port. We need to go through some procedures, so please step out of the car. What is this, a ferry? We're going to Halifax on this? Yes. Since you preferred not to travel by plane, I arranged for this alternative. But a ferry? You're not planning to make us sleep in a communal area, are you? Her father shook his head, making a face as if to say, absolutely not. Not at all. You'll be staying in a top-class suite. The meals are also specially prepared and quite luxurious. We even have premium beverages available. I see. In that case, let's give it a try. Oh, I've always wanted to experience a luxurious cruise. I'm so excited. Her mother was thrilled, contrasting her husband's initial apprehension. I completed the necessary procedures and we all boarded the ferry together. I led them to their suite. Here you are. Please, make yourselves comfortable. My, this is luxurious. It's hard to believe we're on a ferry. There's even a balcony. The view must be lovely. This is going to be a fun cruise. Isn't it, dear? The ferry's suite is incredibly luxurious. It boasts amenities comparable to those of a high-end hotel. Ah, yes, I'm surprised too. By the way, where are the beverages? In the fridge. We have beer, wine, whiskey, and a selection of fine liquors available. Then I think I'll have some wine. I'll go for whiskey. Are there any snacks? Yes, I'll prepare them right away. Would you mind waiting a moment? By the way, does this ferry? Ooh, does it sway much? Well, this ferry weighs a significant amount, so it hardly sways with minor waves. But? The seas might get rougher once we're out in the open water, so it will sway a bit, kind of like a gentle rocking motion. Is that so? Well, I suppose that'll be okay. Is he not just uncomfortable with planes, but also with ferries? Also, the ferry is scheduled to arrive in Halifax tomorrow evening. After that, we'll head to a nearby hotel. The wedding is the day after tomorrow. So please enjoy your time. So, we'll be at sea for a day and a half. Yes, a cruise is meant to be enjoyed leisurely. Please relax and enjoy the experience. Thank you, I'll take you up on that. Her father looked a bit anxious, while her mother gave me a warm smile. I'll also be staying in a different room on board. If you need anything, please let me know. Here's my room number, I said, handing them a note. We'll be departing soon. Please enjoy your cruise, I said before heading to my own room. The ferry soon set sail, picking up speed as we moved into open waters. Stepping out onto the deck, the scent of the sea enveloped me. The weather was clear, promising a smooth journey. I'm reminded of the phrase, "The weather is fine, but the sea is rough." I've heard it somewhere before. Suddenly, I noticed her mother on the deck. "What brings you out here?" I asked. I might have had a bit too much to drink. I thought some fresh air would do me good. It's really refreshing, she breathed deeply. Is your husband not with you? Oh, he seems to have gotten seasick and is resting in bed. Oh no. Was that uneasy motion a sign of seasickness? But he was the one who requested a non-airplane mode of transport, so he can't really complain. That must be worrisome, I replied, trying to sound sympathetic while internally finding the situation somewhat amusing. I must say, I'm quite the actor myself. Well, he had been quite rude to you, so maybe it's just karma. We shared a laugh, understanding the irony. Later, we had a lavish meal prepared, but her father could only stomach some porridge. Her mother and I enjoyed the feast in his stead. About 30 hours after leaving, the ferry arrived in Halifax. After a day and a half at sea, her father was completely worn out and had to be wheeled off the ferry in a wheelchair. You've had a long journey. We've arrived now, so you can relax tonight on land. If I had known it would be like this, I should have taken the plane. No more ferries for me. He muttered weakly before hastily retreating to the hotel. And then came the day of the wedding. Her father seems to have recovered quite a bit after a day. But perhaps embarrassed by his behavior the previous day, he avoids making direct eye contact with me. We'll drive from this hotel to the wedding venue. It'll take about 2 hours, so feel free to rest in the meantime. Countryside distances are something else. He mumbled under his breath. More like, it's Halifax. It seems people from the mainland often underestimate its vastness. I pointed out, which seemed to irritate him. I know that. Halifax is indeed vast. Exploring it properly could easily take over a month. 2 hours later, we arrived at the wedding venue hotel. The couple had been sound asleep in the car. We've arrived at the venue. Please, step out. Her father woke up and looked around. Is this? It's so beautiful. Isn't this an amazing place? He gasped, staring in awe at the impressive surroundings. Oh, what a lovely place. Darling? You always said you wanted to stay at a place like this. Her mother, as usual, was doing things at her own pace. We got ready and headed to the chapel where the wedding was to take place. Emily, veiled, looked stunningly beautiful, making me gaze in awe. In contrast, Joshua seemed a bit uncomfortable in his tuxedo, which made me laugh. Her father was looking around restlessly, while her mother was cheerfully greeting people around her. The ceremony concluded without a hitch, but the main event, the reception, was yet to come. We waited in the lounge while the bride and groom prepared. For some reason, her father was pale and sweating. Her mother, on the other hand, was all smiles. There are many guests from different places here. Oh, look, isn't that person dressed in an interesting way? Indeed, Joshua has a wide network around the world, and today, guests from over 20 countries were invited. I also recognized some foreign acquaintances and went to greet them. Her father seemed to freeze up in front of some distinguished foreign guests. Soon, it was time to move to the reception venue as the preparations were complete. I took her father's hand, who was still frozen, and led him inside. The real excitement was just beginning. The reception was held in a lavish hall. With nearly 200 guests, I'd guess. There were over 20 large round tables. Being part of the family, we were seated near the entrance, at the back. This allowed us to see all the guests as they arrived. What? Wow. Her father was the first to exclaim. He must have spotted a celebrity among the guests. Her mother joyously observed, isn't that person well known in the music scene? And over there, a famous athlete, right? There's an actor. And that person is a well-known sports figure. I don't recognize the guests from other countries, but they all seem quite distinguished. Clapping her hands in delight. Yes, Joshua is involved in agriculture, but specifically in livestock, breeding racehorses, to be exact. We might not have planters, but you'll find plenty of large tractors and loaders around. The guests included renowned business magnates and dignitaries, famous athletes, and trainers from within the country. Horses bred by Joshua have excelled in domestic races. And recently, they've been performing well in international competitions too. Crossbreeding with elite foreign breeds has created popular new lineages, attracting famous international horse owners to purchase them. Our ranch's name is now a well-known brand in the world of horse racing. Among the guests were high-ranking officials from various sectors, and members of parliament. Her father seemed to recognize many faces, his mouth agape and eyes spinning. Her mother seemed to be having a great time. She even wondered aloud, do you think I could get an autograph? As everyone took their seats, her father seemed to finally calm down a bit. He muttered to her mother, maybe we should leave. But she, confused, responded, but the reception is just about to start, isn't it? I had pegged these people differently. I can't possibly stay here. Her father exclaimed, ready to leave his seat. I gently placed my hand on him and reassured him with a smile, the reception is about to start. It's your daughter's big day. And you wouldn't want to miss her reading a letter to you, right? Please stay seated and watch attentively. Then, the bride and groom made their entrance. Emily, clad in a pure white dress and beautifully adorned, now my sister-in-law, responded to the surrounding well-wishes with a gentle smile. Throughout the reception, her father seemed uncomfortable, mostly looking down. But to others, it might have seemed like the wistful demeanor of a father giving away his daughter. After the reception, her father was profusely apologizing to Joshua, who accepted the apologies with detached grace, neither outright rejecting nor accepting them. From the beginning, there was no issue at all. Her father faced significant embarrassment in front of the wedding reception attendees, having told his own family that our home was just a simple farm. He faced severe criticism from relatives when they learned the truth at the reception. Despite his previous boasting, it seems he was practically disowned by his own circle. Yet, her mother remained unfazed, even relieved, saying, "It's good to have fewer troublesome people to deal with." She seems to have taken a liking to our ranch and occasionally visits on her own. My sister-in-law is often busy with Joshua, taking care of horses or working abroad. Being fluent in French, she has become an invaluable partner to Joshua. 2 years have passed since then. After graduating from the agricultural college, I started working as a veterinarian on Joshua's ranch. Now, in the cold season, managing the horse's health is challenging, but with spring, we expect many adorable foals to be born. Just imagining these foals growing up and excelling in races worldwide brings a smile to my face. Seeing this, Joshua teases, "Are you only interested in horses? You better start thinking about your future, or you might miss out." My sister-in-law, standing by, laughs, "Oh, that won't happen, right? Samantha is quite popular, after all. Tease her too much, and you might not get invited to her celebration. In fact, I've confided in her alone that I'm seeing someone. He's a senior from university." She teases, "Maybe you'll get a proposal around your birthday next year? But what about you? I am expecting a niece or nephew next year, right?" She hasn't told Joshua yet but shared the secret with me. Joshua and Emily are overjoyed. They're a couple I aspire to be like, dreaming of someday having a similar happiness. Imagining all these possibilities is my current joy.